Milkshake.
So, it's our inaugural, very first ever Milkshake podcast.
Legal podcast.
Yes, legalized now in 50 states.
We are approved to go live now.
We have. We've got rid of all of the things that surround all of the illegalness of what did exist before.
And we've cleaned up our ways.
Yeah. I'm excited. This is our first one.
Yeah. And lawyers have approved us. There's no copyright infringement. Everything is straight and narrow now, man. So we can talk about anything we want.
Any and everything. And that's what we do with Milkshake. So everybody knows we talk about things and stuff and things that happen in the world and marketing and advertising and other cool things that may not be related to that because we're very multifaceted people who, you know, talk about lots of things.
Sports, entertainment, you name it.
Yeah, food.
Food.
It's a good one right now, too. So that's what Milkshake's about. That's why it's called Milkshake, because who's never had a really good milkshake before?
I think everyone has. I think that's a safe bet, unless you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah, that's true. But you still enjoyed it while you ate it. And maybe that's what we're about. You enjoy while you're listening, but the after effects might not be that great.
Yeah, you'll be miserable.
Long-term
afterwards.
effects suck.
Yes.
So
we'll try to keep it short form then.
Maybe we need to do that and stop talking. So in this first episode, this exciting episode, Randy has this great idea for us that we'll probably do throughout several episodes of a top 5 that we're going to go back and forth on. And he has a whole backstory of it and how it came to fruition. And we'll kind of just dive in and build on that.
Yeah, it's funny, Jeff, because when I brought this story up to you a couple of weeks ago, it stuck with me now for over 20 years. It's kind of bothered me. But when I went back to grad school, I was actually, I thought I was strong with marketing, right? And every grade I got during grad school was an A, except in one class, and it was marketing. And the reason I got a B in marketing was because my professor did not believe that my my paper was well suited for the advertising world. I did
Shocked.
the paper, honestly, and I did this paper. I did this paper on product placement and how product placement could actually re-engage audiences who were tuning out during commercials, right? Because back in 2000, people were using their VHS. It was before TiVo and all the streaming services we have today. So people had VHSs and they would just skip through the commercials.
Right.
So the only way for an advertiser to really effectively reach his audience all the time, in my opinion, was the use of product placement. And that's evolved over time and gotten better and stronger. And now there's native advertising, and that kind of falls into what we'll talk about later. But the fact is, I did this paper on product placement, which I thought was genius and looking forward in terms of advertising. And he said, I don't think that'll ever work. So 20 years later.
And where is he now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's probably running some huge ad agency in New York City.
Probably.
And I'm still
doing Super Bowl ads left and right. And
exactly. But, so as I was thinking about it, a lot of stuff has evolved over 20 years. And I thought you and I could go down a list and we could do our top 5 each and, kind of elaborate on what it either what memories were brought back or why you thought it was a top 5 use of product placement over time. And if you want, I'll kick my first one off.
Let's hear number 5.
So this is actually what started my paper. Back in 2000, the show Survivor first aired. And I actually enjoyed the show for about 2 seasons. Have not watched it since season 2. But in season 1 or season 2, I don't recall exactly when it was, they had these challenges, right? So the Team A would fight against Team B and the winner would win the challenge. Well, they really starved the people in season 1. All they gave them was enough rice to have for 20 days, 1 cup a day. So they really starved these people. So during the challenge, they actually brought out it was either Burger King and Mountain Dew or McDonald's and Mountain Dew or somebody. And they promoted that during the show. So if you won this challenge, Jeff, you would get a Whopper and a Mountain Dew. Now, to me, that was speaking volumes about the product. Now, sadly, Survivor still ran commercials the entire show. So it kind of interfered with the show, but they could have replaced commercials with things like that.
Right.
So number 5 was the very first true product placement that I saw in modern day that kind of stuck with me. And so 20 years later, I wrote a paper about it, but it was Survivor and their use of Mountain Dew.
A very crappy paper at that, I'm assuming, based on your grade. So.
Oh, yeah, just a B, just average.
Just average. Well, that's interesting. Your number 5 is the first one that stuck out to you. My number 5 is the same. first one when I was a kid that stuck out to me. There was this movie, and I don't know if you've seen it. A lot of people haven't. I thought it was great. It's called Mac and Me. And it was this alien. It was right after E.T. was super successful. There was this, it was like this alien, and it was almost like a knockoff of it, right?
I think I do. I think I saw that one because I do remember them leaving some kind of trail as well, right?
Yeah. And so and a side note, if you ever watch Conan, and every time Conan has Paul Rudd come on his show to promote a movie, Paul Rudd, all he ever does, they'll say, "Oh, let's show a clip of your new movie." He shows this same clip from Mac and Me every time of this kid and this alien going off of this cliff every single time. You have to Google that because it's funny.
Right.
So anyway, so number 5 for Mac and Me, there's a scene there. Well, first off, it's McDonald's is who they're promoting.
All right.
The dude's name's Mac, the alien. So
Makes sense.
I think McDonald's had something to do with the production of this show. Well, there's this really 80s scene where they're hanging out. There's a bunch of kids and teenagers hanging out in front of McDonald's, and you see the sign behind it, the iconic sign behind it. And they're like breakdancing in the parking lot when the alien and this kid pull up or whatever. And you see them eating food and things like that. But it's like the coolest party ever. Ronald McDonald shows up, like all of the cool stuff. And since then, I always wanted to go to McDonald's and have this same experience. I expected like a wave of people out on the, outside just dancing around and whatnot. What it did do is stick with me because every time I went to McDonald's, thought of Mac and Me. Every time I watched Mac and Me, I wanted McDonald's. Perfect, very subtle to some degree, just with the sign in the backdrop and everything. Yeah. Very subtle, but also a very good product placement. The first one that ever stood out to me as a kid where I was like, oh, okay, I need some McDonald's right now. It actually worked.
There you go.
So yeah, that was a good one.
No, that is a good one. That is one, right when you said that, the first thing that came to mind was E.T., of course. Which did not make my list. It may make yours, but I do remember the trail in E.T. and so forth. But my number 4, we'll jump down to number 4, another movie, A Few Good Men. Mm-hmm. It was actually sponsored to some extent. I think Yoo-Hoo chocolate drink gave A Few Good Men $1 million to have their product in the refrigerator the entire show. So every time he opened up his refrigerator, the only thing that was in there was Yoo-Hoo. And actually during one of the... somebody said, "Hey, do you have anything here to eat?" And he said, "All I have is Yoo-Hoo and Cocoa Puffs." So I remember Yoo-Hoo a lot, Cocoa Puffs not as much, but Yoo-Hoo was a prominent sponsor of that movie, kind of a comical relief from it. The movie got $1 million for just promoting their product without interfering with the story of A Few Good Men, which was actually a decent movie, and they didn't overdo the whole Yoo-Hoo, but enough to stick with you over time. So that was my number 4.
I bet Yoo-Hoo gained popularity right around that time, too. I think I remember that. Like, honestly, Yoo-Hoo had a big jump.
They probably did. They've done a few things, actually, Yoo-Hoo has, and that was one that stuck with me. And Cocoa Puffs, not so much, but Yoo-Hoo was prominent every time he opened his refrigerator, so check that out.
So my next one, number 4 on my list, actually relates to your background a little bit. It's a beautiful romantic movie.
Horrible movie if you're going where I think you're going. My wife loved it.
You've Got Mail.
You've Got Mail.
Yeah.
And... so there were other movies like You've Got Mail, which I'll touch on briefly, but You've Got Mail for a couple of reasons. Obviously, AOL and the
You've Got Mail,
like that whole Sonic branding, which to me, I want us to do an episode on Sonic branding sometime to really talk about like the Netflix sound and some of the sounds and things that just really get you when you hear it. It's genius when you do those things. You've Got Mail was that when you pulled up your computer, you logged on, and you heard that, you got excited. And
people don't ever talk about this, but I'm going to interrupt you real quick. It's not even proper English.
Yeah.
You've got mail, so you're saying you have got mail.
You have got mail. Randy, you have got mail. You've got it.
You've got mail.
Well, regardless or not, it was a great movie because everyone loved Sleepless in Seattle, so they loved this follow-up to this. I still do. But it was the perfect, where basically the entire movie was a promotion to AOL at that time, which it was on top of the world at that point, which needed people to understand what email was, what internet was, and because we didn't know then. We were just getting used to it and getting comfortable, and that movie helped with it. And 2 other ones that are similar that I just do honorable mentions for my number 4.
All right.
That are very similar in the same alignment are Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Yep.
I won't speak on that much, but it's, exactly. And then another one, surprisingly, there was almost just a 2-hour promotion of a company was the Internship. And it's
Google.
literally about Google, how great Google is, how you want to work at Google, behind the scenes, the googly values that Google has. That entire movie was just about Google.
I thought you were going to grab my number one, but you didn't. So
I'm not going to.
I get to save my number one because when you said the whole movie was about, so you'll see my number one.
I might know what it is, but I'm gonna refrain from saying it. So yeah, You've Got Mail, AOL. I think that was at a time where it was pivotal for us to start grasping and understanding the internet. I think that movie actually helped because it very much made it sexy to get this email and to be, and people are like, wait, what are they doing? Like they're back at home typing on their computer at night and talking to each other. Like it made you like, I need to get on that. If I'm not on the AOL train, I'm going to go do it now. Yeah.
I was at AOL when that came out, and we actually got a private screening before it was released to the general public.
Did you meet Tom Hanks?
I did not meet Tom Hanks. My wife loved the movie. I really, it was fine. It was fine.
I could still watch it every day.
Yeah. She loved it.
I'm a Tom Hanks fan. I watch all of his movies, and probably make out with that guy if I could.
I may go sign into AOL later just to hear that I've got mail.
You've got mail.
See, that's what it did. That's Sonic branding. So.
Exactly. All right, so I guess we're on to number 3 then, right?
Yeah.
All right, my number 3, I'm going to jump back into TV again. American Idol. American Idol is prominent with Coca-Cola, right? Every time you tune in to watch them, the judges all have Coca-Cola in front of them. Sadly, again, they're still not taking advantage of it. They're still running thousands of commercials. So I know it's the cost overrun that they have to pay Simon and all the artists for. But
right.
The fact is, if you watch American Idol, you cannot watch that show without seeing Coca-Cola on every scene. So
every single one.
I'm not a big fan of the show anymore. I did like it when it first came out, but it was
the first 25 seasons.
Yeah, but Coca-Cola was prominent. I'm not sure what American Idol got out of it. I'm sure a bunch.
Were they even drinking Coca-Cola?
Probably not. No. You listen to the artist all day, I'm sure you've got something mixed in there. So,
yeah.
But Coca-Cola number 3 and American Idol.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think that's a good one. I actually was going to put that on my list. Number 3, you actually talked about a little earlier. It's the inspiration for Mac and Me was E.T. And E.T. to me is still, I actually just watched it yesterday. It was on again, and I made the kids watch it. It's my favorite movie of all time, period. E.T. has always been that way. You look at Steven Spielberg at that time, he just came off the hype of Jaws, and he had to follow up with something. He was brand new with Jaws, and he was like, I got this director, I got to prove myself. And if you watch the cinematography of that film, the storyline, everything about E.T. is awesome. Just, and it'll live on forever, eternity. It's just so great. But Reese's Pieces are my favorite snack. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. It has to do with that movie and being my favorite movie and loving that movie and idolizing everything about it. All I ever wanted as a kid, all I ever want now are Reese's Pieces. And if you don't remember it in the film, and you touched on it earlier, so you obviously do, he left a trail for E.T. to come. That was the whole premise of them actually connecting with each other and finding each other was through Reese's Pieces. Yeah. And so to me, it's number 3 on my list. I wish it was a little higher, but the other 2 are much cooler. But E.T., greatest film of all time. And a beautiful product placement. I don't know if they ever got money for Reese's Pieces or not. I don't know if that was too early on in the game or whatever it was.
I bet it was too early because that had to be
82.
Early, was it 80? Okay,
yeah.
So that was probably before. And if they did pay, it was probably so minimal.
Which is why I think Mac and Me, which copied everything about E.T. in a very corny way, probably went to McDonald's and said, "Hey, we'd love to throw you in here and give you some money."
Right.
So, yeah, E.T.
No, E.T. definitely one of the top 5 movies of all time for sure, if not the best. But I do have a daughter who is freaked out still today at age 21 of the look of E.T., who everybody else wants to cuddle with, but she's afraid of him. All right, number 2. Here we go. We're getting close, right?
Number 2.
And
we don't have any of the same ones, which I love.
So far. And I know the next one you don't have on your list because we've already talked about it real briefly before we went on the air. Seinfeld. And I'm not going to pick any product specifically. I do know that Pepsi was brought up a few times. Obviously, every cereal. I do know in one episode, only because I brought up Yoo-Hoo earlier, there was actually an episode on Yoo-Hoo, Junior Mints, the famous Junior Mint scene where Kramer drops a Junior Mint into somebody having an appendectomy. So throughout the entire Seinfeld run, I can't pick just one, although Junior Mints was probably the biggest one.
Or what's with Ovaltine?
Another one, right? So my number 2 is Seinfeld. He leveraged that, and I'm sure, again, it didn't cut back on the commercials, but it also didn't interfere with the TV show at all, and they were getting plenty of advertising and branding through it. So just thought it was classic how he incorporated it in. And heck, if you really think about it, Superman was featured in every Seinfeld show in some way, shape, or form, right? So not that that's really a product, but Superman is a brand. And
It is.
It was constant. So Seinfeld in at number 2.
With the greatest TV show of all time.
Yes, by far.
By far. So I agree with that. I like that one. My number 2, they did it in a very obvious and comedic way with this product marketing with this. And so this Wayne's World.
Love it.
And with Wayne's World, do you remember the scene where they go through and they're like Nuprin, and they're like going through, and they did Pizza Hut, Pepsi, Reebok, Doritos, all in this like 2-minute segment where they're obviously mocking
yes.
product placement doing this. But it was beautiful the way they did it because it was a comedy and they did it in a comedic way.
Right. And it didn't take away from the value of that. Like you mentioned, Doritos or what have you. You laugh knowing what they were doing.
Yeah, like this. I still remember specifically because they're talking about, because now they're going to be signing this contract and they're like, oh, we don't want to do that kind of stuff. And Garth is literally kicked back with head to toe Reebok gear on. And he's like, we don't just want to be like sell out like that or anything. And it's just great. It's perfect.
It is.
So.
And they are mocking it. You're right. But there's an effective use of product placement,
and they're still doing it. Yeah.
Right. But that was a great movie. That's by far one of the best.
Well, let's hope that our number ones aren't the same, because this has been interesting so far.
Yeah, it's been kind of good, the back and forth. And I didn't even think about E.T. until you started talking about Mac and me. I'm like, heck, how did I leave E.T. off? Because I, like you, loved and still do the movie. So I'm shocked I forgot about that one. But my number 1 is the biggest brand of all time, I think, in terms of product placement, and that's Castaway.
That's my number 1 too.
Is it really?
Yes.
So Castaway... First, when I mentioned this to my wife, you know what she said? Oh, Wilson.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's FedEx. The whole movie is FedEx, and he took care of the package. He kept that one package wrapped the entire time, and that was his salvation. And that's what got him home and delivers the package at the end, and his life's all set, and he's going forward. But to me, the biggest use of product placement, sure, Wilson was part of it,
right?
And that's not to be undermined, but the whole movie was a movie. Like you said, You've Got Mail was about AOL. Castaway was FedEx. So love to hear your take on that as well.
Yeah, and I agree with the FedEx, and I think the Wilson spin for me is what touches more. Obviously, FedEx was great because it told the story. We'll deliver your package even if we're in a plane crash and desert on an island or whatever. That's what we do, even though that's not true from what I've been experiencing in life.
He would have opened that box to see what else was in there.
Yeah,
hoping for food maybe.
And Tom Hanks, like, again, the fact that he's in here again on this, this guy at these movies, the way he like gained weight and lost weight for that movie and grew his beard and all of the things he did. And I think one of the greatest moments of that movie is when he's beating his chest, I made fire, that whole thing. But Wilson for me is what stuck out, and I agree with you on FedEx. I really do. So maybe it's great that you said that, because my focus was more Wilson, which is the obvious
That's what
one.
Liz said, yeah.
But Wilson, the whole thing, the concept of us as viewers crying when a volleyball gets washed away at sea, and you're so sad and you're upset. Now, granted, music has a lot to do with that, and the sound that you're hearing and all of that to evoke that emotion. But the fact that you became so attached to this volleyball, and Wilson, the brand, went on right after the movie. And remember, they released those with the blood on it, with the spikes and everything that he built in to create Wilson. And they totally were about this and promoted this. And I do think it helped their brand name for sure.
Oh, by far. Like I said, there was 2 products in there. And when I mentioned this to my wife, the first thing she said was Wilson.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but what about FedEx? And she didn't really see it as a commercial for FedEx, so to speak. But it goes back maybe more to my UPS days. I did work at UPS. And so when I saw FedEx, it was almost like, oh, FedEx. I hate FedEx because I'm a UPS guy. But love the movie. Great movie. And both products.
Was great, right? Really what I loved about the Wilson side. So I'm glad we had a different take. But one of the cool, snubs in there. So you knew that Wilson was already being promoted. It was this very, emotional thing and attachment. The biggest snub was that she married the dentist, Dr. Rawlings. And so which is a hurtful thing already, A, because of his tooth scene that he had, but then also because he comes back and his wife's remarried to Dr. Rawlings, which is totally a stab that Wilson was able to do, the brand, to one of their competitors. And so, to me, super creative. I think it helped a lot. Now when I see balls in store and I've noticed the Wilson brand, I'm like, oh, that's probably a good brand. Maybe I'll take that home and get attached to it. I don't know. I that's why it's number 1 on my list for sure. And it was probably the best. And I'm sure we missed other ones. I can name other, movies and TV shows and things.
Tons.
And now a lot of it we should talk on, it switches to social media now. And one thing that I get concerned about as we talk about product placement is this forced product placement that happens in sponsorship with social media with these influencers. And I'm doing it in quotes right now because they do these paid sponsorships and it'll say paid sponsorship and it'll be something completely random that has nothing to do with their channel or what they talk about all the time. And I think that brands get a little confused and think, oh, wow, that person has 1 million followers. I can reach them. And it's not the same native content, that, so to speak. It's not that organic approach of these that we talked about. It's very forced. And I think we should stop trying to do that and get back to the old days of, literally, oh, here's Coke setting in the scene kind of a thing. So
no, you need to keep your audience engaged. And all of our top 5, there wasn't a point in Wayne's World where you said, oh, I'm not engaged because he's talking about Doritos. Everything that was done in these movies or these TV shows never took away from the engagement. But you're right. When you see it, whether it's in social media or on TV where it's forced, there's no impact. And in fact, I'd be willing to bet there's a negative impact to that brand when you're forcing it down the throats of people who really don't want to digest that information. So it's got to be done right. It's got to be done effectively, and you want to reach the right audience. So I couldn't agree more. When I'm on Facebook or Instagram and I see things that just don't make sense, it's a waste of money to me.
Yeah, and I think, and we should totally do an episode on this and talk and bring in some influencer marketers and people that are really doing it just to get their opinion on this. And is it effective? Are they getting good feedback? I know that I haven't seen very, very positive results at all when there's one thing to do product placement and then there's another thing where you're just kind of selling out.
Agree.
You're building a channel and you're like, oh, I got to make money off of it. So the sponsor's going to pay me money. So I'm going to put this shirt on and do a little post about it. We're so savvy now as consumers. We see right through that stuff quickly. And it actually leaves such a bad taste in our mouth for that influencer now, for that person we're following.
No,
so,
you're right. You look at, you take golf, for example. Guys have a lot of different logos on them today. But like when Tiger's just walking with his Nike logo, it's not changing anything. Everybody still respects Tiger, still respects the Nike logo. But the minute you start throwing on Charles Schwab, it's like, why is he endorsing Charles Schwab while he's golfing? It doesn't make any sense at all. So agree. There's got to be a better balance in product placement.
Which I think it kind of proves the point of this whole episode we're talking on with product placement. Think of the NFL or NBA or any of these sports teams, why they're such rigid, as far as what they can wear, as far as their anything external outside of what the NFL officials or officially has licensed to that team to be able to wear. Like you can't wear a different brand socks or different color, different brand shoes or a different logo on this. You get fined so much for those types of things. And it shows the power of product placement within things that we watch daily.
Because the NFL knows that their brand is so strong that people have to pay to be a part of that.
Right.
So, Rydell helmets. No one else can wear anything but that helmet, even if there's a better helmet out there, until the NFL agrees. So you're right. You can't put on your different socks and so forth. But you look at NASCAR, they've got different sponsors all throughout. MLS, soccer, various different sponsorships and so forth. But you're right. The NFL is very protective of their brand and their sponsorship. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever capitalize on that in a different way.
Right. What do you think as far as, a small, medium business, anyone listening that is like, hey, yeah, I'm not Coke, I'm not Pizza Hut, I'm not Wilson brand, how could they jump into this world, and do product placement effectively and try to reach, their potential audience?
Well, if you look at regional things, and that's probably where they need to look at regional opportunities. If they want to try product placement, one of the things, and this is a question you've thrown out there, and I'm just noodling through it, but if I've got a small business in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm going to find either maybe a podcast in Atlanta to be a part of, maybe a local show to be a part of, and get my product or my store involved with them in some way, shape, or form, right? So that whether it's an early morning TV show and I've got cool home decor, I'd want to donate some to that show in the hopes that people would realize that my furniture or my decor is a little bit different. People want to come into my store. So I would look at local opportunities versus national stuff. So a store in Atlanta, Georgia doesn't want to sponsor a movie, right? They don't want to put $1 million into Yoo-hoo placement, so to speak.
Right.
But that's what I would look at. How about you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I look at, like, let's say you're a flower shop. You could provide the flowers at all the local Chick-fil-A's and have just a little thing on there when people are there. And you're obviously, we all know Chick-fil-A's are busy, so as many people that see it or whatever. There's different types of product placements you can do to get creative with it in that sense, whether it's in the real world or even online. I think podcast is a great one. The Milkshake podcast is looking for sponsors and for people to do some product placement. Right now I'm drinking water. I wouldn't mind drinking other drinks and talking about it while I'm drinking them. So we could totally get into that.
And it would fit right into it, right?
Local, whether it's local or regional brand, I'm not opposed to any of it at that point. I could wear shirts. I could, be...
Well, the shirts aren't really going to show unless we get a visual podcast.
Which through social media, we do have.
True.
So we can share it that way.
It with,
We could have beautiful flowers in here right now that we're smelling.
Would love that versus you.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't have that right now. So I do think there's different ways you can do that and be a part of that, whether it's, but like you said, local, regional, community, focus on that. Don't think big time being in a movie or things like that. There's all kinds of creative projects that are going around and events and different elements that you can tie yourself to.
Events are great. I'm glad you pointed that out. Events would be a great way, right? Anything that's out there where you can showcase your products, services. Events are fantastic. So.
Well, I think this has been good times, even though we had the same number one.
Which is actually great because we didn't conspire on this. We didn't talk about it. We just brought up the idea and we came through with 5.
And we saw it for different viewpoints as well, which is good.
Exactly. Well, you know what I would like before you close out this podcast is I would love to see people's top 5. I would love for them to respond to this in the comments or wherever. Give us your top 5 product placement. We'd love to see it and talk about it in a future episode.
And we'd love ideas on future topics as well, whether it be about marketing, whether it be about food or sports or movies or Seinfeld. We can do an episode specifically on Seinfeld, whatever it is that you want to talk. And we want you to engage with us. So if you're interested in being on the show, just reach out to us, slide into our DMs and talk to us and we can set that up.
Would love it.
Since this isn't a live broadcast, we can't say, call us now at 434-44444.
Well, once the attorneys give us the access to that, we will go live.
And dial that number, see who answers that, whatever number I just spit out, and see who picks that up. So this has been a good first episode here for Milkshake.
Beautiful.
And I think it's been great. And I wish we would have done something surrounding a milkshake as product placement. Would have been more fitting, but...
I do like Chick-fil-A milkshakes, so maybe they might want to work into the milkshake theme of our podcast next week.
I do enjoy a good Chick-fil-A milkshake, so someone make that happen out there in the
Brewsters. Anyone.
Any milkshake at all would be good right about now. So it's been great times, and until next time, enjoy life and love yourself and love other people and stuff.
Absolutely.
Milkshake.